An intellectual carrot, the mind boggles.
You see? You see? Your stupid minds. Stupid! Stupid!
Earth has had Santa Claus long enough. We will bring him to Mars.
I've been afraid a lot of times in my life, but I didn't know the real meaning of fear until I had kissed Becky.
One thing will be clear. It's not for man to interfere in the ways of God.
It's alive. Oh, it's alive. It's alive. It's alive.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Earth vs. Soup, episode 127. I'm Aaron Pollier.
And I'm Darlene.
We watched a Universal horror movie today, mainly because, again, we had done a science fiction movie last episode, and we decided to go back to the well of Universal horror movies, and we had just eaten at Famous Monster Pizza again last night in Decatur, Indiana, and that restaurant is filled with old Universal horror movie memorabilia, and they show amazing Universal science fiction films from the 1950s up on the big screen. What did we watch?
Crawling Hand.
That was Crawling Hand last night, and we laughed and laughed because we have already reviewed the Crawling Hand for Earth vs. Soup, and I'm sure the people that sat around us got annoyed again as we ripped on the movie and really enjoyed ourselves, but we did have giggles. Again, we did have giggles from certain people when I yelled out "Skipper!"
And somebody else
did too on the other side of the restaurant, and that brought me joy. But anyway, we watched Werewolf of London from 1935 tonight.
It's 75 minutes long.
It's black and white because it is 1935, folks. If it's in color, there's something very strange happening.
The budget was $195,000.
Wow.
They were trying to get Bela Lugosi, but to consider for the lead, but he was involved in Mark of the Vampire.
Well, see, everyone did give two shits about Bela at this point in time, and everyone loved him, and he was always very, very busy. So I'm glad that he had enough work that he could turn down Werewolf of London at this time.
The music score, you said that you liked it in the beginning.
Yeah, I like it. Well, you see, in these old movies, like post-Dracula, because remember, Dracula had classical music at the start, and then it does not have a score because it was so soon after silent films that everyone wanted, the movie companies didn't want music because they thought that it would be confusing to the viewers to have music on there.
With the silent films.
Because they're so used to silent films. So Dracula is a very strange movie in that way.
But silent films did have music.
Yes, but they were outside of the film being played either as not a part of the movie. If what they were afraid was that if it was in the movie with sound on top of it, that people might assume that the music is being played inside the movie scenes. And look, this seems like that would be a very dumb idea. Like, how would anyone ever think that? But again, this is a completely different time.
We do have movies that do that, though.
Well, yes, I think it's diegetic music and non-diegetic music. Or like, there's music that's a part of a scene, and there's music that's part of the movie over the scene, right? But in this, it is clear that the movie companies went, oh crap, our original idea was complete garbage. The talkies should have a score to them. People are smarter than animals, and we need to have a score. And Werewolf of London has an actual score, and it's pretty good. I wouldn't say it's amazing, but it's pretty good. So, what else do we want to talk about for this before we get into the plot? Have you ever seen this movie before?
I think I have.
Yeah, I think I have too. Again, it's one of these, if it's a Universal horror movie, I guarantee you that I watched it with my mom.
But the only thing I remembered is that one weird woman that's high-pitched and that
really
getting sick about the plant eating.
See, I think I remember the the flowers in the laboratory.
That's what I'm talking about. And there's that.
No, not the botanical gardens. I mean, like the moon lamp.
Oh no, I don't remember that.
I think I remember that because of it looks like a big pile of manure that these plants are kind of in, but it's soil. It's soil. But for whatever reason, I remembered it as manure. Remembering this film, so it's obvious that I watched it as a kid on a low resolution television set, and an old low resolution television set that's a tube television, folks. Yes, we are. We're actually not really that old yet, but it's very clear that entertainment and media has changed quite a bit since we were kids.
When I was a kid, I had a console TV that had its own box.
Yeah. One of the floor TVs.
Yes.
Yeah. See, I had a big floor TV, and when I say big floor TV, the TV had a screen of like 15 inches.
Yeah.
And the box of it was huge, though. It was like a cabinet.
Yes, it was like
it was color. It was color, but when we talk about big screen TVs when we were kids, it's like maybe 15 inches.
Yeah, we're not talking about wall size.
Because I mean, you think about TVs today.
I had a black and white that was in the kitchen that was only.
See?
I mean, its screen was less than 12 inches.
Okay, so the first TV that I owned that was my TV that I actually got to have in my bedroom was a black and white tube television with a 7-inch screen.
And it
had bunny ears. It had bunny ears.
Yes, and that's the thing that most people forget about it is the joke about trying to get your TV.
Yeah, but I had good.
It goes
reception.
It's got to go over the head of everyone that never had to deal with that.
It also boils into our whole argument of how UHF might not make sense to a new generation. Weird Al's movie UHF. But then we have to go, well, it's more like YouTube channels today, like the weird crap that YouTube channels would do, or
Yes, but they didn't have to deal with the bunny ears and grabbing aluminum foil and stringing aluminum foil between your antennas.
Darlene, my father worked at a metals foundry, metals recycling foundry, I should say, and he would get in miles of copper wire. So I rigged in like a massive antenna that I had built that actually I strung up the regular TV antenna, but then I kept putting loops up and down the antenna, and unfortunately it turned the TV antenna into a lightning rod, and even more of a lightning rod than it was, and I had melted copper at the bottom of the TV antenna one time. The TV antenna that's back behind the house that I grew up in. Yeah, all right. So
you pushed it out your window.
I put it out my window and then looped huge loops of copper wire through everything. It was
without
crazy.
Grounding it.
No grounding at all. And that TV exploded. The first big electrical storm, it just blew apart in like a poltergeist level kind of detonation in my room. It was fun. Anyway, Werewolf of London. What else? Okay, so there are connections to other kind of famous films, I should say.
Great Expectations.
Great Expectations has an amazing amount of connections to this. Who is it? The director that did this?
The director,
he did Great Expectations as well.
The main female.
The leading lady in this is the leading lady
in Great Expectations.
And her name is Valerie Hobson. She plays a woman named Lisa Glendon in this.
And the main male character in this one was in it, but not very.
Yeah, he wasn't a very highly billed actor in Great Expectations. But the other person that has a lot of connections is Warner Oland, who plays Dr. Yogami in this movie. He played, Charlie Chang in all the Charlie Chang movies. And if you want to talk about an example of Hollywood whitewashing a ethnic character, this man is like the poster child for it. And I mean, again, this is the 1930s. It's a very different age. Don't cancel Warner Oland. Warner Oland he was born in Sweden. He's a Swedish man. And he is very much not a man from Asia.
But he gets typecast
in everything. I mean, all these
even
Charlie
this
Chan
one,
movies.
it's a Yogamani, like he was
Yogami.
Like he was from Japan.
Like almost not every one of his characters, but almost all of his characters. He plays Dr. Fu Manchu in The Mysterious Dr. Fu Manchu. He plays so many Asian characters, and I think it's just because
He got typecast.
he just got typecast. And it's shocking because you can look at him in this movie and this man's not Asian. You can this man's not Asian. You look at him in the Charlie Chan movie posters, this man's not Asian. They just have him with like Asian style eye makeup.
Eye makeup and
like the little
beard.
Fu Manchu mustache. Like that's it. And
I think it's only because he's got those eyes that
no, I think it's just makeup and the fact that he was a very inoffensive man in general. Like he comes across as a very kind of mild-mannered person in this movie, and I don't know if that's like his general personality, but the man he has a big filmography behind it under his belt. I mean, he was almost in 100 movies between like 1937 and 1912. So you're talking what, 25 years, and he almost did 100 movies. So on average, 4 per year. And the thing is, like early in his career, it was not 4 films per year. It was like 1 every 3 years. So the man was a busy person. He was clearly well regarded in Hollywood, for good or ill, whatever. But I'm just saying that this guy, if you've watched any of the Charlie Chan movies or some of the Dr. Fu Manchu movies, this is Charlie Chan. This is Dr. Fu Manchu. And he plays another supposedly Asian character in this movie, and he is not Asian. That being said, this movie opens on Tibet. Let's get into the plot. And I'm going to talk about some things that bring me joy in this movie, because the first thing we see brings me joy in this movie.
you cracked up laughing.
I cracked up laughing because the camera comes in on a map that says Tibet. And like it's clear that this is supposed to be Tibet. And I immediately know it's not Tibet because that is Vasquez Rocks. In fact, I can see exactly where Kirk fights the Gorn. Like in that shot, I'm like, Darlene, look, it's Gorn Rock.
You did this. and you stopped it. And
I stopped it. I was just clapping because this is not Tibet. You have broken me out of the movie. And I love you for it because Vasquez Rocks is a distinct, dramatic looking rock formation, correct? I mean, you can understand why people film there.
Well, you know it by Star Trek. Other people would know it from these old movies because
it's like Bronson Caverns.
Yes.
Bronson Caves or
it's
Griffith
close
Observatory.
as enough,
Yeah.
and it can be
anything. It can be Vulcan. It can be, it can be the planet that Kirk fights the Gorn on. Because I don't think he technically fights them on Cestus 3. It's a different planet. Anyway, it can be anywhere. The fact is that people that use it today now also reference the fact that it was in Star Trek so much as different weird places. So Vasquez Rocks has appeared in so many movies. As soon as you see it, folks, you will recognize it, or you don't really watch a lot of 1950s and 60s science fiction. So it's fun that it was shown in 1935 in Werewolf of London. Okay? Because it's Vasquez Rocks, Tibet. And
an English botanist,
yes.
Dr. Wilford Glendon.
Dr. Wilford Glendon. And I just refer to him as Wilfred all the way through my notes.
Journeys there, and he's got somebody, and I never knew who it was because I didn't find him in the credits.
Was it Hugh Renwick or something like that? Let me look through my notes. You can keep going though, Darlene.
Well, anyway, he's searching for a rare flower, and he starts talking to the people to get where it is, and he thinks it's in a valley that nobody goes to because there's a legend behind their superstition. They don't actually tell you what it was.
Oh yeah, no, they do. They say that people disappear and never come back from this valley because there are demons that kill them in this valley. Okay, that's where they leave it. Now, obviously, since this movie is called Werewolf of London, we kind of know what the demons are. Right?
And then there's this professor priest that comes and scares everybody away.
Yeah, because they think he's a demon, which is strange.
But he says, I wouldn't even go into that valley.
Yeah, what the hell's wrong with you guys? I guess wisdom requires people to fail. Like, he was like, honest
being
with
a fool.
Being a fool, yeah. Wisdom comes with being a fool or something like that. And I was like, wow, this guy's being really direct, but it's probably because he's seen a lot of people go into this valley and never come out. Like, hey, if you don't want to listen to me, that's fine. Screw off.
But Wilford does find the plant that he's looking for, which, do you have the name of that plant?
It's moonflower.
Yeah, that's
That's what it is.
It also has lupus in there somewhere.
Yeah.
It's a wolf.
It's the wolf flower.
Wolf moonflower. And he finds it, and then he gets attacked.
Yes. He gets attacked by a werewolf. A wolfman. It is very clear it is a wolfman. But remember, this is before The Wolfman with Lon Chaney. This is actually technically the first werewolf film from Universal. And I will correct myself right now. The Wolfman from 1941 was not the first film to really firmly put in a lot of the werewolf lore. It did some of it, like Silver and all that. That was added in with
Silver,
Wolfman.
put in the Wolfbane.
Wolfbane.
This doesn't have hardly any of it.
No, it does. That werewolves change with the full moon, because normally you never had to have... Old lycanthropy, remember, was like a pact with a demon/devil that a person did and could change at will. Not at a certain point in the moon cycle.
So these films made it a curse.
These films made it a curse. They made it a transferable curse. They made it so it happened under the full moon. They made it so it was that you didn't really have control over yourself either.
And you went after your loved ones.
Because
that was one of the things in this one.
That might have been mentioned in some of the old French folklore, the going after loved ones, but I'm not sure on that. Remember, there was the whole werewolf scare in France in the early 1700s, where it was like hundreds of people supposedly were killed, but it was likely that it was like a psychopath roaming around the French countryside. Anyway, a werewolf attacks him. He bites him, but he like forces him off
and gets out of the valley.
He gets out of the valley, but he gets out of the valley with the flower, and a big pile of dirt, which actually I thought was a smart thing to do. If you have just discovered a new flower, a new species, this incredibly rare species, just taking it out of the soil and bringing it back, bad idea.
Without testing the soil, because you got to figure out the alkalites of the...
Well, yeah, like the pH, you want to know what minerals it tends to like in there, but it's not just that. To me, this is why it's so smart. This plant might have to have certain bacteria in the soil to grow around its roots. It might have something that lives in the soil, like a worm or an insect of some sort, that is symbiotic with it. Bringing out the soil is a very, very, very smart thing to do. So credit where credit's due. This might seem like it was overly complex that this guy brought out this giant pile of soil with this flower in it. I thought it was very smart.
Yeah, because like most people don't realize birch trees are all like one birch tree.
Yeah.
And it requires a fungus also in its roots to do the metabolism.
Well, a lot of trees have a fungal component on their roots to help them. But anyway, the doctor Wilfred brings back the flower in this pile of soil back to London, and he works in a botanical garden that's attached to his house. Correct?
Attached to his house, I believe. His lab is too.
And here's the thing. I think that it's supposed to be like the actual London Botanical Gardens. It just so happens that his house is like right next to it.
And he has a lab that is off of...
Okay, the lab is super cool, and we need to talk about the lab.
It's off of the greenhouse.
Yeah, we need to talk about the lab because this is the next scene. This is, I would say, maybe the first time that we ever see on film, even like in any kind of science fiction, that this guy has a phone-based video surveillance system. And when I say that is, think of what your cell phone would be, your flat smartphone, hooked up to security cameras that digitally send video to your phone from cameras around your house.
We have that.
We have that, but this is 1935. So what is it? It's a rotary stand phone that he has to dial in a number. It brings up a specific video camera and broadcasts it to like a tube television on top of this phone. And I was like, Darlene.
They didn't even have television at that time.
I don't think they did, but they had movies, and it's not a giant. They had freaking television. It was just incredibly rare. It was probably under development, but even if it wasn't, see, I don't know the exact date that television was really. For a second. I'm gonna.
The date that television really came into power, especially in UK, was when the Queen got.
Darlene, it's there.
It's there.
Yep. 1927.
1927.
It was first shown in London in 1927, like the first actual demonstration.
Okay, I mean, but that when it really became big was on her the Queen's.
It was a King's speech, because it was like in the 30s. It was again in the 30s, like pre-war, wasn't it?
No, the rush for everybody to buy TVs in
England that was the
Queen's,
Queen Elizabeth's coronation. Yeah. But see, it's Scottish engineer John Baird gave the world's first demonstration of true television before 50 scientists in central London in 1927. So, okay, it is completely feasible that in 1935 that a highly advanced scientist of some sort has a video security system installed in his high-tech lab. But I'm just saying, when I saw that, I was like, holy crap, that is amazing. Because it is literally a phone-based video surveillance system. He had to dial the rotary phone to get the number of the camera that he was looking through. And he sees his wife come in. And it turns out that his wife is named Lisa. She's the actress that we've already talked about that was in Great Expectations. What was her name? Valerie Hobson, the actress's name. Her name is Lisa. She arrives and says that, hey, look, there's a party. You are expected at this party.
Because it's a botanical society garden party that he was putting on.
Yeah, but he was so interested in this new flower. Okay, fair enough, right? And she's like, you haven't been the same since you came back from Tibet. And he's just kind of blowing it off. All right, so
we have you wouldn't be either if you were bitten by a...
Well, yeah, but he hasn't changed yet. It hasn't been a month.
But it probably is changing his mood.
Probably. I mean, he has like wolf blood going through him or whatever. But anyway, there's like a rich woman that is in this scene for some reason, and like she's only in this scene really this time.
No, Eddie is also we also go to
Eddie Combs, played by Spring Byington.
Yes, she's also the lady that does the music. What are they called? The salons.
Okay.
The musical salon that she's the drunk.
Okay.
Hostess there.
Okay.
That screams about when he comes in the window.
Okay.
And then he ends up killing that.
She was in the original Batman TV series. She was J. Pauline Spaghetti in the original, and she was in I Dream of Jeannie. Wow. And Mr. Ed. So I've seen her many times. My lord. Anyway, keep going, Darlene.
Well, that's going into the...
She's freaking out about carnivorous plants.
Yes.
And there's a triffid.
Yes, there is a triffid.
I mean, it's not an exact triffid.
It eats a frog.
It eats a frog. This is clearly a fake carnivorous plant.
Yes.
So that's why I called it a triffid. There are incredibly large carnivorous plants here that people are like, oh, how horrible.
It's eating a fly.
In all of Christendom.
Poor little fly.
In all of Christendom, this is savage.
I was like, oh my Lord. Goodness.
Yeah. So it at this party, a man named Paul Ames comes in. And at first we realize that Lisa knows him. And it comes across as her being immediately cagey about how she knows him. It's clearly a lie when she introduces him. And he says, yes, of course, I proposed to Lisa before you met. And she's like, ha 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 ha. I was six. I was 6 years old, and he was 12. And it turns out, no, that's not the goddamn case. Later on, we realize that Paul proposed to her like right before.
She probably wasn't lying. It was probably the truth, and then
more later, so that they had been in love with each other, both of them. It hadn't been one-sided, nothing like that. Anyway,
damn,
we are introduced. Our cat is on trying to climb on us. Let's see here. We are introduced to a man named Dr. Yogami, who is played by Warner Oland. Who I've already said it played Dr. Fu Manchu and Charlie Chan. And he tries to get involved with Wilfred. And he says that they met in Tibet, but briefly, sir, briefly. And he says that there are 2 werewolves in London right now. And you immediately looked over to me and it's like, how does he know that? And I scowled at you, Darlene, and I said, because they're the 2 werewolves. And you're like, oh, like, it's obvious, damn it. I don't really remember this film very well, but it's really clear the way that Dr. Yogami is kind of like right up in the face of Wilfred and like all but winking and grinning at him, all but doing that.
But like, he says at this point, that that's a antidote.
That the flower is an antidote. An antidote,
but it's not. It's a
in that it stops a person afflicted with lycanthropy from becoming a werewolf
for 2 hours.
A few hours, he says. A few hours. So the flower blooms in Wilfred's lab, and hair begins to grow on his hand, and he's like, "Huh, that's slightly strange."
But then he takes the flower and
he like rubs its sap on him, and like the hair goes away. He's like, "Ah, okay." I guess I was just hallucinating. Or maybe the flower is making me hallucinate that I don't have the hair. Who knows?
No, I think he knows at this time when he does that.
So, well, he's then very clearly delusional through the rest of the movie. When he's like, well, not the rest of the movie, for the next few scenes when he's completely denying that anything's wrong. It's like, oh, there's nothing wrong. There's no such thing as werewolves. As he's like trying to lift a leg and piss on trees. I don't know. It's a little silly if that's the case. I think he doesn't really think there's anything wrong, but nothing's really happening. He just thinks maybe he was too tired or something. Dr. Yogami comes by the house and Lisa speaks with him and allows him to come in and speak with Wilfred, even though they weren't really planning on having visitors. And Dr. Yogami says, oh, tonight is the first night of the full moon. And he tells him that the flower will only work for a few hours. And that, hey, look, we need to go get these flowers ready. And Wilfred's like, screw off, buddy. This is my discovery. You don't get to interfere with it. So Wilfred sits down in a wonderful, like, smoking jacket in his beautiful Victorian library. And his cat starts freaking out at him. It's a pretty cat, and I don't know what the hell they did to that cat to make him afraid. But that cat honestly was terrified. Like
its back was fluffed up on the spine.
It's rare to see a cat that actually terrified, because it's the spine was
our cat. We could get him to purr and
he'll puff
do
up.
that,
but not the back. The back bristle the bristle
yeah,
of the back
that
like that cat did. That was pretty intense.
Spine.
So I don't know, like maybe did they just like bring in like a panther and just have it right off camera, and had tied the cat down or something?
Maybe it brought in that small little dog that the Emmy or whatever her name is.
Oh, Eddie had?
Eddie.
Maybe. So he starts actually turning into a werewolf as he's reading a book on lycanthropy, but it's not actually lycanthropy. It's like lycanthrophobia or something like that. The book, how it describes werewolfism is not using the proper terminology, let's put it that way. But, again, I think that they just didn't really know what they were writing about at this point. This is 1935. It's really the first werewolf movie from Universal. You got to give him a little bit of wiggle room.
His wife comes in and
no.
that was before.
Yeah,
That was before. She came in with Paul because he wasn't going to go to whatever function they were. And there's the kiss that she just stiffens up.
I don't know. But anyway, we flash over to the lab. We see hands cutting 2 of the blooms from the plant.
And at this point, I'm going to say I'm kind of mad because those are female
No, they weren't.
hands.
You kept saying that, and I'm like, I'm not going to say anything. Those were very clearly a man's hands, to me. What I think you saw as female hands, why they were female hands, because they were well manicured.
And I'm used to yours.
And
which
yours
are
to
crappy.
my hands are like tore up. So, Wilfred changes, and unlike other werewolves here, and this is what's interesting, he hasn't really lost his mind. He gets up, says, "Grr, grr, arg," and puts on a hat and a scarf and a coat before leaving the house while growling. Like, it's clear that he wants to kill, but he hasn't completely lost his mind.
And he goes to finding that the 2 blooms that he got are gone.
Yeah, and then we go over to a party and we see Lisa and Paul are there along with Dr. Yogami.
And that's Edie's Como's place.
And there's like the drunk woman.
Yeah, that's the hostess.
Is that
of it.
Edie?
That's Edie.
Eddie Combs?
That's
you think
Eddie.
that's Eddie Combs? I thought that was a different
nope,
actress.
That's Eddie Combs.
Okay, that's fair.
She said she was buying a house that was one of the
On the
manors
Thames.
On the Thames.
Yep. Okay. And that was a funny scene because she is right on in this manor on the Thames, and this is not like in a further. Yeah, it's not in the best part of London, but it is a nice manor home. She's talking to Dr. Yogami, and she says, "Look, oh, it's so beautiful being on the River Thames."
And right over there
is one of the worst areas of London. They'll kill you for a shilling. And she's completely drunk. And I'm going, "You're on the Thames. It's 1935. Do you know how many tanneries and raw sewage is being dumped into the Thames?"
She bought the house because some king or that lived there.
Yes. Okay. Or like stayed there for a little while.
Yes, it was.
But it's my favorite quote from my favorite quote that I do from Sherlock Holmes. Whenever Sherlock Holmes comes back into London, he goes, London, the air is bracing. And then I always say, as Dr. Watson, yes, the smell of tanneries and open sewers is wonderful, Holmes. And it's because it's the Thames in this time. Now, I mean, I'm sure that 1935 is not as bad as like Victorian London.
But the worst was in 1950.
The 1950s pea supers.
Yes.
The ones that killed hundreds of people. All right. Anyway.
But I'm sure London had that in Victorian age.
So Edie
had that problem.
Eddie, and then see, I don't want to say Edie because then I think of Hard Ticket from Hawaii and.
But it's ETTIC.
IE. So
it's E.T.
E.T. E.T. I have to say E.T., not Edie, because then it's Cynthia Brimhall as Edie
it's 2
from
T's, not a D's.
E.T. Yes, I love the Andy Sedaris films, so, and I mention them sometimes, and I apologize, folks. So what we have is Dr. Yogami is listening to this drunk woman prattle on about how she loves the smell of open sewers, and he's like, "Bitch, you're drunk. You gotta go to bed." She was drunk. He's like, "Bitch, you gotta go to bed."
And Lisa and Paul take her upstairs.
Yeah, because
to bed.
She's shit faced, literally, if she likes the smell of the Thames. And they constantly hear the howling of wolves. Now, oh no,
That's why she came back in.
It's dogs. It's dogs, darling. You know, it's just dogs out there. And they're like, people are like, "No, those are wolves." In London? Oh, sure. I guess they're just feasting on the slums across the river. They're eating like the discarded children of the vagrants there or something. I don't know. These are all like incredibly high-end people.
Pompous people.
Pompous people. So that's the thoughts that are going through my head, that these are the people that need to be up against the wall. But because they don't really give a crap. Like, oh, there's wolves. We're fine in here. Let's just continue drinking our champagne. It's 1935. Screw you.
Anyway,
The rise of fascism is happening a couple hundred miles away.
They take her up to her bedroom, put her in bed with fully clothed.
Yes. And Wolfman breaks into her room because the windows are open, because she must have the smell of shit in her nostrils to sleep properly. So they had to leave the window open. And Wolfman comes in. She screams bloody murder.
The men race up.
And there's no Wolfman in there. She's just like screaming and closing the window.
Because he went out the
window. I mean, yeah, obviously you have a rampaging wolf that wants to kill.
It's a balcony window, so it's not...
balcony window. Because it was the window that I thought that Dr. Yagami and her were standing outside. I honestly thought they were standing outside her bedroom. That's not the case, but that's what it felt like, because she was hitting on Dr. Yagami the entire time while she was drunk. That's what it came across as.
Okay, that balcony is used also in other scenes too.
Yes, it's the same scene.
Because it's the same
set.
Same set for front of her ballroom or whatever that is.
Yeah.
Her bedroom.
Yes.
And also the gray Glendon Manor.
Okay. So the next day, Dr. Yagami sees the murder of a random hooker in the news. No, is it a random hooker? It was a woman. A woman did get killed by Wilford.
Down on
Goosebury?
Goose Street. Goose Street.
On Goose Street, okay.
Because he when he goes to run, this lady is walking home from wherever she was.
Yes.
And Wilford kills her as a wolf.
And I will say this probably has the second most numbers of sex workers injured in a werewolf movie, right behind strippers versus werewolves.
That's
a joke.
Strippers versus werewolves killed the werewolf. The strippers killed the werewolves.
Yes, they also shoot them in the balls a few times, but they grow backs because they're not silver bullets. That's okay. But anyway, there are a lot of sex workers that are injured in this movie.
And
there are, for whatever reason. So it turns out that like Dr. Yogami has the Blooms in his hotel room that he's reading this newspaper, and the chambermaid that is a part of this hotel staff like is doddering upon these flowers, and he freaks out when she's like touching them. Yes. Because there's only like one bloom left.
There's one that he sucked and it's like
it's wilted.
It's wilted.
And she's like, "Oh, it's so sad that this bloom died when the other one's still fine." And she starts like doddering over that bloom, and he really goes after her.
Yeah, and then he gives her coins to go get her some posy. Her
own flowers, yeah. So later, Wilfred gets his lab assistant to guard these flowers, and he has to say that Lisa's like, "Hey, come on out with me.
Gonna go to a ride in the moonlight.
We're gonna go on a ride in the moonlight." And he's like, "Oh, God damn it." With Paul. And he's like, "Man, I'm gonna eat Paul someday, but I really don't want to go. I don't want to go because I don't want to wolf out and like murder all of you because..."
But he was assuming the one bloom would come out.
Yes, because there's one bloom left.
She kind of forces him to say yes, and then he has to tell her no later on.
Yes, because he's like, "Oh crap! Okay.
I have a thing that I gotta pick up from wherever."
Yes, I have to go down and talk with some other scientist, and
he said he had to go out. It wasn't in London.
No, it was outside of town.
Yeah.
So he then goes and meets two of the women that I love in this movie, and it's because I've never seen.
They're two landladies or
okay, so
something.
they're sitting in a rundown bar. I think it's somewhere in London. It's a pub, I should say.
It's a tavern.
Okay, and Wilfred comes in and he's like, is there anyone here that lends out rooms? He asks the bartender.
After another lady drinks 2 things of gin.
Yeah, and she's like, and she wanders away, but the bartender's like, "Yeah, there's 2 women back there. Talk to so-and-so. She's eating a plate of tripe." And he goes back there, and they're two old ladies that are fairly well dressed, let's say, like lower middle class, but they're, for the time, like, okay.
And one of them complains that her tripe tastes funny, and the other lady that's drank like 3 things and says she only drank 1 of gin.
Yes.
Goes, "You've got your veal in your mouth.
You're eating your veal," and she's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry."
And then pulls it out,
and all this food just drops out of her mouth that's caught on the veal, and I'm like, what the hell is happening all of a sudden? What's happened to this movie? But it gets weirder. It gets weirder. Okay, so Wilfred comes into the scene and sees these 2 old women, like, shit-faced,
they're
like vomiting out tripe out of their mouths onto their veils, and he's like, do any of you ladies rent rooms? And like the one lady's like, oh yes, of course, I have the best rooms. And then the other lady's like, no.
She lies.
I have the best rooms.
And then the one woman punches her.
Yeah, the one old lady, the second old lady hauls off and punches the first old lady in the throat, knocking her ass completely unconscious. Her head falls onto her bowl of tripe, and the second old lady is just smiles. She just smiles up at Wilfred and says, I have the best rooms, and I will take care of you. Let's go back. And they leave this old woman and her head in a bowl of a plate of tripe. The thing is, guys, this is not the only thing that happens with these two.
This is a wonderful scene.
It's so amazing because Wilfred, you have to think that Wilfred's like, what has happened around here? Because it's like out of nowhere, the second old woman just punches her in the throat, knocks her clean out. Okay.
His thought probably was, if I howl in that, this woman won't care.
I mean, okay, if you saw this happen in front of you, you wouldn't just be completely like stone faced.
No, like, I wouldn't. I'd be like, what the hell
just happened? She just drops her head into the freaking bowl of half vomited up tripe and her dirty ass veil.
The other one, the one that drank the three things and lies that she's only got 1.
Yes.
She takes him up to her room, and it's stairwells.
Yes.
And stairwells.
And she is interested in getting into Wilfred's pants. Again, 1935. She's like, you're single. I'm single. Maybe we can make something happen. And Wilfred's like, no, I'm singularly single. I am going to be single forever here. And she won't let it go.
And he slams the door on her face.
I mean, she's not old, right? Like, maybe she's in her late 50s, early 60s, let's say.
No, and that probably was 40s.
No. Oh, come on, Darlene.
Those 2 ladies were supposed to be playing...
No, because that's Mrs. Whack and Mrs. Moncaster. And that's Ethel Griffins and Zeffie Tilbury. So if I do Ethel Griffins, she was born in 1878. So in 1935, she's getting close to 70. Okay.
Okay.
Not there. And then Zeffie was in 1863. Okay, so we're talking over 70. These women just went after each other. And the thing is, I'm going to go to their next scene.
Yes.
Because there's like, the thing is, the next scene that they're in, they're fully talking on like the staircase, and they're like, oh, there's no hard feelings. I totally understand. This is just business, etc., etc.
He slams the door, and then sits down on in the window
with moonlight falling on him, and like saying, I pray I don't change. I pray I don't change.
And he changes.
And he jumps out the window.
He howls, and then he jumps out the window that was closed.
So the 2 old ladies, they're like, okay, we're going to go and investigate.
Both of them have a key.
And they're like, no, it's okay. It's just business. And then the woman that got that hell beat out of her the first time throw punches the second woman and knocks her ass clean out. And it, like, as revenge, it just walks off. Like she falls down the goddamn stairs. I've never seen anything like this.
One spectacular.
These are side characters.
Characters that have this wonderful.
Okay, guys, side characters. This is 10 out of 10, like high comedy. 2 old ladies throat punching each other and just falling, like seriously injuring each other over nothing, and it comes across that they do this constantly to each other.
They're best of friends and best of enemies.
They steal each other's bottles of liquor and just drink them dry.
They're the what is it?
Frenemies. They're best frenemies, except they're best frenemies and will kill each other at some point. Like, because she punched her on the stairs and she fell down. Like, she could have fallen down the full flight of stairs, and that they probably would have just been like, "Huh, oh well," and walked away. and then the one old lady that survived would have just found somebody else to start throat punching. I guess. I've never seen anything like that.
Okay,
just 2 70-year-olds.
But we need to get back to the actual movie.
Oh my god,
this was just
10 out of 10. 10 out of 10. 10 out of 10.
Then we go to a lady walking into the zoo.
Oh no, not a lady. A sex worker.
Okay. She was a sex worker?
She was a sex worker. She was coming into the zoo because she's trying to draw the guard of the zoo away from his wife and child, because she wants that fat London Zoo check.
Well, anyway, she gets munched.
She gets munched by the Wolfman.
Yep. And because he's out and about, because he locked himself in that house, but the apartment, but still escaped.
So the guard leaves her alone. Wilford attacks. Dr. Yogami goes to Scotland Yard and basically tells them everything he knows about werewolves. And they're like,
and
what the hell's wrong
Thomas with you? How do you pronounce that last name?
Forsyth.
Forsyth.
Yes.
He thinks everybody is just totally
crazy.
Because wasn't it Paul before said something about werewolves too?
Yeah. Okay. So, well, no, that's later. Paul comes in and starts talking about werewolves. Here's my thing. You have this guy coming in who's a well-regarded, like, he's a doctor of something, probably a doctor of divinity, just like, Van Helsing. But he's talking to Scotland Yard about werewolves. It's 1935. And they're like, get the hell out of here. Our next appointment is here. Oh, it is Dr. Van Helsing. He's coming in. And they're like, oh, Dr. Van Helsing. Yes, he's an amazing guy. We really need to deal with whatever he talks about. That was the immediate thought that I had in my head. That would have been a really funny, like, aside that Van Helsing is coming in. Because Van Helsing talks to the friggin' Scotland Yard all the time about vampires. And they totally believe him after a little while. After at least the second movie. After Dracula's Daughter.
Anyway.
This is all in the same goddamn universe. It's the Universal Monster movie universe. So when did freaking Dracula's Daughter get filmed? When was
50
that?
something, I thought.
Dracula's Daughter. No, it was before that. 1936. 1936.
So next year.
It's actually the year after. Okay, so fair enough. Scotland Yard might not believe in werewolves yet because they haven't been completely convinced about vampires yet. Fair enough.
But this Dr. Yogami, which I gotta laugh the whole time that she was on the balcony. He kept on telling her his correct name, and she kept on
Yokohama.
Yes.
She kept calling him Dr. Yokohama. Yeah.
Like, he talks about needing to get these flowers, or you're going to have more deaths.
Oh, it's going to be a plague upon London which has not been seen in centuries, or something like that, right? Because it's werewolves attacking people and making them werewolves. Unless they kill them, like he's been killing all these sex workers. Like, honestly, this is like a werewolf plague. It is just like what a vampire plague could be, This is bad news. Bad news, right? So Wilford then locks himself into this like monastery type thing that's on his property.
On his property at Glendale Manor, which is not, I don't think it's in London.
Okay, so but Lisa and Paul are driving out there because Paul really wants to see it before he flies back to America. And this is where we really learn that Paul doesn't give a shit that Lisa's really married. He's like, I love you. I've always loved you. I want to take you back to America. You're miserable. Please come with me. What did I say, Darlene? Shut the F up.
She even told him to stop it.
He wouldn't.
And he wouldn't.
I wanted to go in there and punch Paul. Like, okay, number one, if you love somebody, I get it. Tell them you love them. Even if it's not right, like, yeah, they're married, whatever. It's okay to share your feelings, but then just go, okay, I understand the realism of it, what this is, and this is it. I just needed to say what I needed to say, and now I feel better about it. But he didn't do that. He
kept being gropey and it was really, yes,
no,
it was handsy.
It was a little handsy. Was it rapey though?
No, but okay. It was handsy.
It was handsy, not rapey. It didn't verge into that, is what I'm saying.
No, but she told him to just leave it alone.
That being said, that being said, that people may see just being slightly handsy being rapey, so we shouldn't discount people's feelings on that because touching should have consent.
And once you said just stop it.
Me when I said
when somebody says stop it,
you stop it.
You stop it.
He didn't.
And he didn't.
So that is kind of getting rapey. Let's be honest. Before that, that's handsy. He's being a little aggressive. When she said stop, then yeah, done. You need to stop. Anyway, it turns out that like Wilfred hears them and he gets really pissed off.
Well, there's also the investigation at
because the chambermaid dies, doesn't she?
The chambermaid dies.
And they're like, who stayed here? It's Dr. Yogami. But here's the thing. We don't learn about that yet because, Darlene, you're a scene ahead as always. Because what happens is that Wilfred hears Paul and Lisa out there and attacks. Lisa's able to get away because Paul distracts him and Paul goes to Scotland Yard. Lisa locks herself in her house. When Paul goes to Scotland Yard, he starts talking about werewolves. And that's when the Scotland Yard people hear about the murder of the chambermaid. And they go out and say, oh, look, there's no way in hell this is Paul. I mean, not Paul, Wilfred. Because if this was Wilfred, how in the hell did this chambermaid just get murdered exactly the same way, 150 miles away at the same time? There's no way this guy did both murders. So they said, look, you're crazy, but we'll go out to the hotel first and investigate. And then if this all pans out, like that this could be a second murder or something, then we'll go see Paul. Because I don't believe a word you're saying. And we'll go see Wilfred. So they go out to the hotel. And they realize that, look, here's these flowers that were there. These
and this
rare
is the
flowers.
next day after the...
It's supposedly like the same night. They must really tear ass out to this hotel and back.
Because I thought it was the next day.
It might be the next day. It might be the next day by the time they get everything back.
Because everybody gets back to London.
Yeah. So they go out there. They figure out that maybe Dr. Yogami is a bad dude too.
Yes. And then one of the next scenes is
him fighting Yogami.
Wilford telling his assistant, Hawking, which is not even on the credits.
Yeah. He goes back to his lab. Well, I mean,
he goes back to his lab, tells Hawking, you don't see me. And he goes to pick the flower.
Yeah, and Dr. Yogami's there.
But he goes to get something else, like something to put the liquid in or something. I don't know what.
Yeah.
And Nagami comes down the stairs, not from the outside door, down the stairs, and cuts the flower and uses it before Wilford does. And Wilford goes, because there's the moon.
And Wilfred turns into a wolf man again. So Wilfred and Yogami fight. Yogami gets away.
No, Wilfred kills him.
Okay, Wilfred kills him. I'm sorry. I must not have that in my notes. I know that he knocks Paul down. Like that he pounces on Paul but doesn't actually hurt him. He knocks him down. And then he sees Lisa. Wilfred sees Lisa in the window of the house that she's like locked herself into. And he decides to break into the house because at this point he's like freaking enraged.
Yeah, Wilford. Afterwards, Wilford knocks Paul down as Paul's going to.
So he comes in and starts menacing. He starts menacing Lisa, and that's when the police come in.
But you can see that he's got some intelligence because she goes,
Paul, stop it! Not Paul. Wilfred, stop it! And he slows down. Not stops. He slows down. But the police come in and shoot Wilfred down.
And he thinks
he's on the ground. And here's the thing, it's not a silver bullet. See, the silver bullet thing hasn't come around yet.
No.
He drops to the ground and he says, "Thank you for killing me. Thank you for the bullet. It's the only thing that could stop me. I'm going to see what this has all been about in a few minutes. Thank you." And he dies. And he slowly reverts back into his normal human form. Almost the end. What the last shot we see is a plane flying away with who knows on board to what unknown destination. But we assume that it's Paul and Lisa together flying back to America. But we don't know. It could be Paul alone. That's not ever really resolved. But then that's the end. Okay? So maybe we didn't cover the plot exactly as clearly as we could have. The point is that there were some really incredible, entertaining moments in this movie. Mostly with the side characters.
Side characters again.
Especially those two old women. Those two women, yes, they're at the top of my this works part of this movie. This works. What else works for you, Darlene?
I liked the sets. They're good.
Yep.
The acting was good.
Yep. The Wolfman makeup, I think, might be better than the iconic Wolfman makeup from 1941.
I like how they darkened.
They give him a really deep widow's peak.
A widow's peak that came almost to his eyebrows down. And I really like the scene that he walks in transfers pillar to pillar to pillar.
Yeah, so they do cuts. They do really good edits as the camera passes these pillars where he passes behind them. So they basically changed his makeup a little bit, and then continued to film. Then did it a few times so you see this kind of transition. It was smart transitions, smart editing. Very well done. I really like the makeup. I will say that I think what also works in this, not just the old one. I'm going to talk about, come on, Edie, freaking great, drunk as a skunk.
Yeah, I loved how hilarious she was as a drunk.
I will say that everything else in this movie was generally average. Was there anything in this that didn't work? See, we'll go quiet because we actually have to think about this. This was bad.
The whole Tibet thing.
The Tibet thing just didn't really work. Yeah, you're right. I agree. I don't want to just completely monopolize talking about what works and what doesn't. So I was kind of the Tibet stuff, it felt like it was either a set or at Vasquez Rocks. Maybe if I didn't know what Vasquez Rocks were, maybe that would have made it a little better. But that's Southern California. It's a day for night shot
and
because there's
sharp
shadows.
And you go, oh my, they must be sweating in those outfits.
Because it's clearly day. It's a day for night shot. It's Vasquez Rocks, and they're in costumes for the Himalayas, the high Himalayas. And I'm like, oh man, those people are miserable. And they bring in a camel. Remember the old preacher is on a camel?
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah. Those didn't really work. The Tibet stuff didn't work. And I'll say, even though it was accepted at the time that Warner Oland as essentially a Asian man, he might have been known for it, sure, but come on, guys. It's 1935. They didn't do anything that. That was just such a standard thing, hiring a white actor to play an ethnic character. From today's perspective, that is awful. It's really bad. It's whitewashing, right? And it's, but from the perspective of 1936, I don't think they're going to be 35, I'm sorry, from 1935. That's not out of the ordinary at all. At all. So I don't know if I should hold it against the movie itself. If that happened today, yeah, you would hold it against the movie. That would be incredibly terrible.
Then there was one other second character that should have got some laughs.
What?
Because she was just a gripey old lady, high-nosed lady.
I don't know.
And she was in both the garden party as well
Oh, the
as
woman that was no.
get off my train,
Oh,
loud
man.
as can be as a performance is going on.
Stop stepping on my train.
Because she was that way at the party too. Just this.
What lessons can be taken away from modern filmmakers? Don't whitewash. Don't whitewash. Like hire a person that actually is Asian to play an Asian character.
And you don't have any of the excuses to that they had back then, where
well, I don't think it was an excuse. It was just that's common practice.
there was
like
kind of like the John Crow laws shit in that.
yeah, but it's Hollywood. It's a little different in Hollywood. It's just I think that was just something that was kind of accepted at the time. But don't do it. Also,
And you don't need to do it.
Do not be afraid to hire good actors for your side bits. Like, even if they're, and I know that it happens every now and then, like these beautiful cameos that you sometimes get with like really well-known actors that everyone thinks it's a joy to see them just for a little bit. Like you think Tropic Thunder with Tom Cruise just suddenly showing up, and everyone thinks that was hilarious. I know, Darlene, you haven't seen that, but it's little when you have a bit part and you have like a really good actor that's playing something that's really going to drive home a point or make people laugh at a point where they might need it, where the movie is slowing down or becoming a little too heavy, and you suddenly have two old women throat punching each other. Like, god damn, that made me stop and think for a second. What the hell just happened? Wait, did I imagine that? No, that woman is face down in a plate of tripe because she just got throat punched. Like,
I didn't even know that happened. I was like, what happened?
I'm like, Darlene, look at this again. So, like, don't be afraid of having little bit parts that punch you in the throat, like that really come out and make you laugh or feel something, right?
And it did give because the movie was getting really tense, and
there's lots of murders. Lots of murders of sex workers.
But it wasn't the murders. It was just that it was becoming serious drama.
Yeah.
And it needed that.
Two liquored up old ladies throat punching each other.
It needed something a little bit, and it did it.
Like, obviously we're recommending this movie, right?
Yeah.
This is a good movie. Is it the best werewolf movie? Maybe not. It did a lot of firsts. The old ladies were 10 out of 10 fantastic. Like, I clapped. I stood up out of my seat and clapped. That was amazing. But I think I liked Wolfman more with Lon Chaney. I think I did. This has its charm, though. I am recommending it. You were recommending it?
Yes.
Out of 10. Out of 10. What would you give it? Out of 10?
I said 6.
Yeah, and I would say about a 6 to 6.5. It's on the good side of average. And we gave a lot of things that were good in this. But most of the movie is average. It's 5 out of 5, and that kind of brings our numbers down, so to speak. And the Tibet stuff and the whitewashing really is kind of like, from a modern perspective. I bet you if we were in like 1970 watching this movie, we wouldn't even blink about those two downsides. Like, it wouldn't even. But I mean, we have to judge it both in the time period that it was made and our modern period, 2022. So that's what we have to do. We can't just say, well, if this was 1970, it would be like a 8 out of 10. But, I'm babbling. You know what I'm saying, folks. We enjoyed this movie. We recommend it. I don't know what we're watching next for 128, but I'm sure we'll have fun doing it, right?
We'll try, but it'll probably be... Well, you still got to do that musical one.
Oh God, the musical. No, oh God, no, God, no.
The image.
No. Oh God, no.
You said you'd do it.
I said I'd do it. Yeah, I know. I'm not big on musicals. There are musicals that I absolutely love, like The Producers and Rocky Horror Picture Show.
And Penzance.
Oh, Pirates of Penzance, yes, because Gilbert and Sullivan are great. I was a very model of a modern major general.
Aaron,
yeah?
Stop right there. This is Aaron, and this is Darlene. Good evening.
Keep watching the skies.
At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought.
Thanks for listening to this episode of This Week in Geek. Hungry for more? Check out our website at thisweekingeek.net. You can subscribe to the podcast, browse our Twitter and Instagram, and leave your thoughts on today's topics. If you'd like to give us some feedback, send us an email at feedback@thisweekingeek.net. Tune in next time, and remember,
lower your shields and surrender your listenership.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Thank you for your cooperation. Good night.